Hello friends, it is Funky Play Brothers, and please remember to subscribe to our YouTube. And today I'm reading the final part of Five Nights at Freddy's Tales from the Pizzaplex, number 7, Tiger Rock, by Scott Cawthon, Kelly Parra, and Adrian Wagger. The last time we left off, Kay was just figuring out that he was still in the VR simulation. What happened in there? Todd asked when Kay reached him and Asher. What did you see? Kay shook his head. He felt feverish and dizzy. Asher, slightly more sensitive than Todd, must have noticed Kay's disorientation. He took Kay's arm. Come on, let's get away from this crowd, Asher said. Why is everyone here? Kay asked. The booth locked up, Todd said, his voice pitched high. You were in there for 5 hours. They couldn't get you out. 5 hours, Kay thought. No wonder the experience went on and on and on. He could see how 5 hours in a VR booth could feel like 3 days in what he'd thought was his real life. Kay looked back at the booth. He blinked and frowned. When he saw that the booth's glass door was open, Kay hadn't pushed through plastic as he'd thought. He'd simply stepped through the normal VR booth door. They couldn't even get into the booth. They tried to get you out, Asher clarified. They called in all their best techs, but the booth wouldn't open. Why didn't they break it? Kay asked, thinking about how it felt like he'd peeled the booth's walls apart. It's apparently made of some kind of special glass that's bulletproof or something, Todd said. They were talking about how to destroy it without hurting you when the door opened, and you shot out of there. How'd you do that? Kay shook his head and shrugged. Then the shrug made him groan. Kay's arms and legs ached something terrible, and his joints were inflamed. But he looked down and saw, to his relief, that everything seemed to be in one piece. It was over. Kay exhaled heavily and turned away from the VR booth. Let's go home, he said. The Pizzaplex people may want to talk to you, Asher said. They'll probably need to ask you questions about what you experienced, so they can troubleshoot what went wrong. They can talk to me later, Kay said, but he hoped they wouldn't. All he wanted to do was go home and pretend the VR booth didn't exist. He wanted to forget everything about future Pizzaplex and Tiger Rock and the rest of it. He just wanted to get on with his everyday real life. If Kay had been able to choose, he would have gone straight home from the Pizzaplex and gone to bed. He felt like he'd been up for 3 days straight. His eyes burnt, he was sore all over, and his brain was so foggy that he could barely remember who he was. But going to bed in the afternoon would have let his parents know that something weird had happened. They'd have been a lot of questions, and he wasn't up to answering them. So he'd suck it up, he'd put on a smile and go about the rest of his day as if it was a normal one. That even included the Saturday storytelling by the fire pit. Storytelling had been the hardest part of the day. He told Malia a disjointed, twisty story about how Elliot and a camel had gone into tunnels to rescue a meerkat, and that had gotten stuck in a cave. But Kay had been barely keeping it together. He knew as he talked that nothing he was saying made any sense. His dad's raised eyebrows expression and his mom's amused grin, combined with Malia's crumpled brow, let Kay know that his story was a big fat fail. Somehow, though, Kay got through it. He even managed to hang on long enough to lead Malia inside and help her get ready for bed. Once she was settled, Kay finally went to his room. 5 minutes later, he brushed his teeth and pulled on a gray t-shirt and sweats that he slept in. Kay settled in under his cool comforters. Finally, the day was over. He could put the whole experience behind him. At first, Kay wasn't sure what had awakened him. His eyes popped open of their own accord, and he stared into the darkness that shrouded his room. Kay's room wasn't completely black. A partial moon cast a pale yellow glow in through the window. He hadn't bothered to pull his shades before he'd gone into bed. Kay lay still and listened. Why was he wide awake? An owl hooted outside. Kay stiffened. He could feel his pulse as his temples His blood was pumping quickly. Kay's stomach clenched. Kay thought of the metallic owl he'd seen beyond the azalea bushes when he was in the VR experience. At the time, of course, he hadn't known he was still in the VR booth, and the owl had seemed as real as Kay's sister and parents had seemed, as real as everything had seemed. But it hasn't. It hasn't been. And Kay had nothing to be scared of now. He wasn't in the VR booth anymore. He was in home, in his real-life bedroom. The owl hooted again, and Kay gasped. His pulse quickened even more. He was suddenly cold and shivering, as if the temperature had dropped 30 degrees. Kay clutched his comforter. He was tempted to pull it up over his head, but the idea of not being able to see what was around him was even more terrifying than feeling exposed. "It's just a normal owl," Kay said. His words sounded unnaturally loud in the night's silence. The owl hooted a third time. Kay started trembling. The trembling was the last straw. "Get a grip," Kay chassised himself. This is stupid, Kay thought. "I'm not in the VR booth. I'm at home." Kay rolled onto his side and reached up to adjust his pillow. Okay, so he'd heard an owl hoot. That wasn't weird. He didn't hear owls hoot very often. But once in a while he did. The hooting owl wasn't anything to get excited about, and in the VR experience, the owl he'd seen never hooted. So there, Kay thought, satisfied that he'd tamped down his fears. He closed his eyes and willed himself to return to sleep. Sleep, however, wouldn't come back. Kay's pulse rate wouldn't settle either. He lay on his side, listening to the of his pulse pattering on his temple. After only a minute or so of that, he couldn't take it anymore. It was like listening to a dripping faucet and feeling the drips on his forehead at the same time. Kay sat up. He exhaled loudly, exasperated. "You're being silly," Kay told himself. Kay wasn't about to let one too long VR experience make him mad. Not even for one night. So he threw back his comforter and swung his legs out of bed. Kay strode over to his uncovered window. He looked out into the night. The moon's soft radiance pooled in the open space in front of the pines and azaleas. The muted light revealed just what Kay had told himself. He'd find nothing. The side yard outside the window was as peaceful and empty as it should have been. No, wait. At the edge of the moon's light, something moved in the nearest azalea bush. Kay frowned. Kay was tempted to go back to bed and pretend he hadn't seen anything. Then he shook his head. Nope. He needed to put his fears in its place, right here and right now. Kay reached out and pushed up on his window. The cool night air rushed into Kay's bedroom. A gentle breeze ripped the sleeves of Kay's t-shirt. Kay inhaled the air's crisp scent. See, Kay thought normal. Everything was normal. Whatever was in the azalea bushes moved again. Kay squinted, but he couldn't make out what it was. He sighed. He wasn't going to get back to sleep if he didn't satisfy himself that whatever was in the bush was something natural, something not the least bit threatening. Kay braced his palms on the windowsill and leaned forward so he could get a better view of the rustling branch. He spotted a small white owl peering through the azaleas' shiny leaves. It was an average, unremarkable feathered white owl. Kay blew out a long breath of relief. His shoulders relaxed, his pulse slowed. He shook his head and grinned at his silliness. The owl lifted off and flapped its wings in the middle of the night hush. Kay could hear the whisper of the owl's feathers as they beat the air. The sound was comfortingly ordinary. Kay started to pull his head back into his bedroom, and that's when the night stopped being ordinary. Erupting from beneath the window like a sprouting geyser, Tiger Rock shot up into view, his glittering robe spread wide around him like a giant owl's wings. Kay didn't even have time to react before Tiger Rock reached for him. Tiger Rock's sharp, clawed paws latched onto Kay's arms, one paw on each forearm. The pressure was harsh but piercing. Kay wanted to scream, but he couldn't. It happened too fast. In one supernaturally strong, heaving motion, Tiger Rock jerked Kay's right arm out and away from his body, totally and completely away. With a squelching wet crack, Kay's arms tore free, and their shoulder sockets' warm wetness coursed down Kay's sides. He buckled under the intensity of his excruciating pain. As Kay's legs went from under him, he stared into Tiger Rock's glowing green and blue eyes. And just before he lost consciousness, Kay watched Tiger Rock taking Kay's arms with him, vanishing into the night. And that's the end of the story. Thank you all for watching. I rate this a story 5 out of 10, 1 out of 3 thumbs ups. It was an okay story, but the whole being trapped into VR forever didn't quite make sense. It also didn't explain Tiger Rock's motives. So I'd rate it a 1 out of 3 and 5 out of 10. So, friends, thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Support our vlog at cashapp with the $ Funky Play Bros. Follow us on social media, the Funky Play Brothers and Funky Play Bros. Thank you for watching. Bye.